Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this special live stream for Black History Month. I have two special guests, Kevin Jefferson. Everybody knows him from the channel. We had our video live all about pre-approval that most of you have watched. Hopefully, if you haven't, you need to watch that replay. And I have Dietrich Williams, and he's in California. And he did a video with us talking about down payment assistance before and those programs. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. I'm also live, hopefully, on Instagram today. So we're doing new things. Go ahead and put in all of your questions. We're going to talk about home ownership the whole hour. So invite your friends, tell people we're on live because it's going to be good information. Kevin, introduce yourself first and then Dietrich.
So I'm Kevin Jefferson, the People's Lender. I am a mortgage loan professional. I can lend in all 50 states and DC.
Dietrich.
Good to know. My name is Patrick Williams, realtor out in Southern California, Los Angeles, to be specific, part of the Global Red Team, division of the Real Brokerage.
Okay, great. So we are going to start off, before we answer your questions, we're talking about Black home ownership. We're at the lowest level in about 50 years at 44%. So 44% of Black Americans own their home. That means 56% of us do not have a house. So Hispanic home ownership is at 51%. Asian home ownership is at 63%. And white home ownership is at 72%. So I'm going to start with Kevin, then Dietrich. Why do you think this is the case? Why do you think it's so low?
Are you going to go with me first?
Yeah, I'm going to go with you first, Kevin.
I think that Black home ownership at the lowest it's been is just because of a lot of different factors. One, the discrepancy in our income and wages. Two, the miseducation of not being educated enough to know what the process is. And then three, the biggest thing is a lot of us are out looking for the free money. And with us looking for the free money, we're stuck in waiting for that money or that opportunity to open up. Example, NACA. I bet you nationwide there's probably a million of us on the list at NACA. It can be a great program if you can get through within a certain time frame. But if you're on that list for years, you're just wasting an opportunity to own a home. So now, if you were on the list in 2023 and you're still waiting, housing prices have probably went up $10,000, $20,000. If you were on there 2022, it might be 50,000. And what you could have qualified for, you no longer qualify for. And if you never get out of NACA and you go to a traditional lending, now you're dealing with double in interest rates. So like the miseducation and wanting it for free. I know they never gave us our 40 acres and a mule, but at some time we have to invest ourselves to get, someone has to be the one in the family to set themselves apart.
Okay. We had Sharna that says, I had a client in NACA too lengthy, they gave up. So what Kevin's saying, if you're waiting on NACA, put NACA in the comments if you're waiting on NACA. But he made that point when we were kind of talking in our pre-prep for this. He said there's probably 1 million people that have been waiting on NACA, and interest rates, they probably could have bought when interest rates were at 2%, 3%, but now we're at 7% and they're still waiting. So if you don't have to be waiting on free money to purchase, and a lot of you don't, let's stop waiting to, get something for free or get something that seems too good to be true, and see what we can do on our own. Dietrich, what do you think our issue is while we're at 44%?
Well, I mean, just if you look historically, we've been hovering around that 42% range since 1968 when the Fair Housing Act passed, and we haven't made any strides. I think part of that has to do with what Kevin's saying is education, but then really getting behind the mindset, because we're talking about, generational wealth through home ownership, right? But if you've never seen your family members, generations before you, be homeowners, then you have no desire, maybe no drive to become a homeowner, because it doesn't sit the same as it may sit with some other groups, right? So the income gap, that's one piece of it. And then you're dealing with a lot of the institutional things that came along to play in terms of redlining, um, uh, steering, all of those type of things play into the psyche of it all. But then on top of that, you look at our nation is in trillions of dollars of debt. And a big piece of that comes from the Black side, right? Let's just be honest with it. So we're dealing with issues where we don't have enough income, but our debts are really, really high, which makes our DTI ratios. If y'all don't know what that is, you haven't been following Shahida closely enough. But the debt to income ratios are extremely high, which disqualifies us a lot of times for being able to even qualify for a mortgage. So you have those issues. You have issues where people don't think that they can when they can. So the educational piece is why people such as myself, Shahida, and Kevin are here, is to really get you guys into the mindset that it's a possibility. It's going to take some work for some of you, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, for sure. And then excellent points. Go ahead and start putting your questions in, because we want to make sure we are not stuck at this 44%. If you're in this, percentage of people that don't have a house, which a lot of you are because you follow our channels, let's get over whatever you feel like is holding you back from making that purchase. Let's talk about it tonight. So go ahead and start putting your questions in. I'm, for the most part, going to moderate this talk today, this live today. Also, I want to say, for me, I think it's education. We have to know and stop blaming your teachers. I wish it was taught in school. A lot of times, because I was a teacher for 14 years, a lot of times those students at 15, 16, 17 weren't prepared to even hear the information. So imagine yourself at 16, at 15, you too worried about the basketball game happening, on Friday, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mama, you weren't worried about your credit, buying a house, and all of those things. But you as a parent have the most impact on your child, even more than their teachers. So if you're telling them, hey, when you get out of school, the first thing I want you to do is get your credit together, buy your first house, that's going to go over better than being in Miss Hill's class for one semester. So you have to have that at home. They have to see it. They have to hear it over and over again, and then they'll make some moves on it. And then also, I think priorities. We driving around in some nice cars because people can see your car and they can think that you got, you have wealth. People can't see your apartment. So a lot of times we prioritize having a really nice car or something, you could show off if you have somewhere to go or, people to see, but you have, you don't really own anything of value. And let's not be fooled that the majority of wealth is in equity in people's homes for the most part. Their homes, maybe their investments, their retirement accounts, that sort of thing. We don't have those either. So we have to, work on both of those things. But a house is kind of, to me, the easiest because you have to live somewhere. So if you're paying rent to live somewhere, you have to live somewhere, kind of invest in that and make it a little bit easier. That's usually an easy thing that people can hold on to. I'm investing where I live. So I'm going to put this down. Let's start asking questions. Let me put this down. Sorry, get rid of this banner. Hold on one second. All right, Kevin, what's happening with interest rates? We just talked about that because, I've done a video. I was like, there's going to be some rate cuts in 2024. We haven't really seen any. Rates went down, I guess, in early January, but it seems like they're going back up. What's happening with rates right now?
So over the last 2 weeks, we have seen rates start to trickle back up and increase. So now the amount of people that are applying for mortgage applications has decreased. Prior to that, um, December, when they said they were going to be cutting interest rates 3 times in 2024, we saw an immediate decrease in mortgage interest rates on that day. And then we saw applications rise to record levels within the last year. So as I tell you, Shahida tells you, and I'm sure Dietrich tells you, if rates are higher, yes, you may be paying a little bit more per month. You could potentially refinance, but there's less competition because let's talk about it. Rates didn't drop significantly. It was maybe a quarter or 0.5%, and we saw it a huge uptick. And that's all it takes is for them to hear, oh, the rates are decreasing and they're going down and going down. And then everybody and their mom literally wants to apply. So right now we've seen it go up, and the reports are we've seen a decline in mortgage applications.
All right, so we're gonna have our first question from Sherelle. She says, how do we stay encouraged that it's possible to become a homeowner with where we are in this country. And I think by where we are in this country, is it, the higher prices, lack of affordability, those types of things. How would you tell Dietrich someone to stay encouraged during this time?
I mean, I would tell people, one, don't allow what you see to dictate where you want to go, right? It's like with any other dream that somebody might have, because there's always going to be somebody that when you tell them what your dream is, they're going to poop all over it and try to discourage you. That's just, I don't know why. That's the nature of people. That's just what we do. So when you're watching the news, turn the channel off. when you hear reports, change the station, because a lot of that information is going to be fodder to try to bait you into being fearful of making a move. And that's one things that you don't want to do, is be so petrified that you don't move. I would say, if in order to encourage you, you kind of got to know where you're at to start with, right? And I think what happens is, a lot of times people just hear that news and think there's no way that I can ever do this, without actually looking at the facts. A lot of us tend to be more feeling based rather than fact based. And so I would say, first, you just want to start off with, basically, what do I need to know in order to qualify for a home? What are the documents that I need to put together? How much can I qualify for? Once you get that information, I think a lot of the fear that happens at that point kind of quells down, because now you know it is possible. But for a lot of us, we see what's happening in America, we hear all the reports, we hear all this doom, gloom, and despair, and we just automatically go, it'll never happen for me. So I think one of the first things you got to do is just cut out all the noise. And there's going to be a lot of noise, especially as we get going to this election year. There's going to be a ton of noise that happens. Tune out the noise and just focus on what you want the goal to be, right? If you want to be a homeowner, focus on things like, how do I get my credit clean if I have credit issues? What does my income look like? Do I have savings? Shahida talked about, most of us don't have, savings or retirement accounts. Those are big issues that help you just in terms of preparing and planning to become a homeowner. A lot of this has to do with mindset. So we got to work on that piece first, and then start getting all the other tangible pieces together.
All right, good answer. Kevin, what do you want to add to that? How can she stay encouraged as far as home ownership?
I think it all depends on how bad you want it, right? Like, how bad do I really want to become a homeowner? And just really just looking online, people are buying every day. People are still buying every day. But you've got to get over yourself. Mom didn't teach me, dad didn't teach me, right? I grew up in a house all my life, never lived in an apartment, but my mother never talked to me about buying a house. Her mom never purchased a home, but she did somehow use an FHA back in 1974 when things were different, right? My mother never talked to me about it, but I picked up on it. And i.e., that's why I'm in this industry. So it's really like, how bad do you want it? I don't care if today your credit score is 500. You didn't get there overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. Yes, you can dispute. You can look at the Instagram and TikTok videos and the YouTube videos on how to try to debate and get it swiped off your credit. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be hard work. And it's an investment in you. Like, you have to invest in making your credit better. The first thing to do, the easiest credit hack, is to pay your bills on time.
Mm-hmm.
Pay your bills on time. Set it and forget it. You don't know how many times I see people with late payments on a $25 a month bill that could ruin your credit. Because if you don't have enough credit, we're not going to lend to you. If you have too much, we're not going to lend to you. And your score isn't going to um, automatically go to 700. I know it sounds like that's the place to be and easy, but by the time you wait for your score to get to 700, housing prices have gone up, and you're going to be at the same payment because you got a 0.25% less and save $20 more on your mortgage. So, like, be encouraged and get with a professional. And when I say a professional, you have to have a team. I'm sorry for going long with. I've got a client now that I've been working with for 5 years, and he's finally ready to make the jump. He's always been able to be approved. He's always been able to be approved, but he just finally figured out, hey, if I'm paying X amount of dollars for rent now, that's went up in 5 years, that's a mortgage payment. And he said, hey, Kevin, you told me to buy now, but I didn't want to make that payment. And at the time, rates were 4.5%. And he thought that was high. Now we're looking at 7. And he's like, man, I'm probably getting the same house I would have got 5 years ago. And that's true, except it's the house is worth more. So if he had purchased 5 years ago, he would have had that equity and could have moved on to something different. So the first thing is mindset and believing in yourself.
Very good point. I just want to add, think long term. Do y'all really think these housing prices are going to be lower 10 years from now? Like, so think long term. Think, if you can go back in years and say, okay, how much were homes 30 years ago? And you're like, okay, should you have bought then? Always think long term. Don't think these first 1 or 2 years. Think 10 years from now. Think 20 years from now. I want you to think longer term as far as housing prices. All right, good questions, good answers. Kamari Wilbright, where does the senior citizen fit into purchasing a home? I'm going to say something, then I'm going to allow you guys to say something. We'll go to Kevin, then Dietrich. I think my mom's a senior citizen. My dad's a senior citizen. I like home ownership as a senior because unless you're in some kind of rent controlled apartment where rent does not go up, then you are able in home ownership to stabilize your payments. Even if taxes and insurance, that sort of thing change, because a lot, research the place you're going to retire to or where you're going to live. But a lot of times they will reduce or eliminate some of your property taxes as you age. And so you're able to have a more stable housing, stable payment each month, that sort of thing. Instead of, there were a lot of people, especially seniors during the pandemic, that were renting, that had to get out of their apartments because they could not afford the rent increases. So I would hope as you're a senior, when your income is not increasing, that you're able to stabilize your housing payment, if you can't eliminate it by paying off your real estate in time. But Kevin, then Dietrich, what do you want to say to seniors?
Seniors are great applicants. I'm going to tell you why. Typically, yes, they have a limited income, but they typically don't have a lot of debt. So you can potentially find something in your price range based off where you live. Typically, your retirement, the amount that you have getting in retirement, it mirrors what you would get based off your area. So if you're in California, you probably get more in retirement than someone in Wisconsin, just because of the cost of living. You can purchase using your Social Security, your pension, your 401k as a down payment and closing costs. If you've never purchased, you're not too old to participate in down payment assistance programs. There's so many opportunities. And I allude to what Shahida said. If you're at a certain age, your school taxes are typically don't factor in. So your payment's going to be lower than someone that's looking to buy that same exact house. If you're a veteran and a senior, that's even better. And I say that because you have zero down payment. And in some places, the closing costs can be covered using the down payment assistance, depending on which program. And depending on your state, sometimes as a veteran, you have to fight to get it, but you may not have to pay any taxes. But it's after you purchase the home. So just seniors can purchase just like anybody else. They're not looked at because of age discrimination. Oldest client I ever had purchase a home was 81 because she wanted to leave something for her family. And she's still alive and kicking today. So she's got plenty of equity and she has something for her family. So you're never too old to purchase.
Yeah, and mine was 90. They were purchasing with someone else, but they were 90. Dietrich, what do you want to say to seniors?
For the seniors, I would say also look at purchasing what we call multi-generational homes. So if you have children that are not homeowners yet, you all can purchase together where maybe you don't need a 2-story home, but there's a home in the back or an ADU that you can live in. So there's ways that you can work around the purchase piece as a senior, especially if you're on a fixed income. if we do something called combined economics, right? So if you do have kids and they are not homeowners, or even if they are homeowners, but they're thinking about investment property, pool your money together and see what you can come up with that way. If you don't have children or you just want to purchase on your own, DPA programs or down payment assistance programs, and there are some in every state. Most of them are local. So there's money that's out there that you can get a hold of. But again, it goes back to something we talked about earlier. Mindset, education, and then just if that's something that you want to do, Kevin alluded to it, just go for it. You have to have in your mind that this is the goal, and whatever comes, I'm going to accomplish this goal.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that question. And that whole Kwanzaa principle, cooperative economics. All right, so we had another question come in. This is in your Dietrich, your neck of the woods. Hello from California, KP Bailey. How do we keep clients encouraged when their current rent payment is cheaper than their mortgage estimate? So what happens when their rent is still cheaper than what their mortgage would be? What do you typically say to clients like this?
So for me, I would tell clients that we have to look at the total cost of home ownership, right? Because it's not just your mortgage payment, it's the taxes that come along with it. It's the homeowner's insurance that comes along with it. It's the maintenance that comes along with it. If you're not in a situation where you're able to take care of those type of things, or you can foresee those type of things coming up, I would say stay put for the time being. And the reason I say this is you don't want to be house poor, right? You don't want to have the house, but then, a year down the line, you're like, I can no longer afford to keep this place. And then you risk losing it. So I would say work on building up 3 to 6 months of reserves. So what you would pay in a mortgage versus what you will pay in rent, take that difference and save it as aggressively as you can. Invest it as aggressively as you can. And then look at it a year, 2 years down the road and see if your options are a little bit better now. Now, there are a lot of agents who will tell you, no, just go ahead and purchase. But this is not like a one size fits all, right? So what we're saying is kind of a generality in terms of home ownership. But if you've got rent that is way lower, because you're coming from California, so you're in my neck of the woods. If you're paying like $1,900 in rent, but the mortgage is going to be $3,500 and that's stretching you, it's probably not a good idea, right? So that's the part where I say we have to look at some other options. Maybe we look at different areas, or we just aggressively try to save and take care of credit issues so that when you're ready, we get you the best rates, the best terms. We can negotiate, then we move forward. So in California, I can't speak about every place else, but I would say in California, because it's a high price state, sometimes it is better to rent than it is to buy. Now that's a short-term thing, right? Shahida told you about thinking long range, because you're paying a mortgage. You just have to decide who's you're going to pay. Is it going to be your landlord's or is it going to be yours? At some point, you want it to be yours, but for the time being, if it's more cost prohibitive for you to rent rather than purchase, continue renting, but you want to also make sure that you're aggressively saving and or investing at the same time.
Okay, very good points. Or just move to Atlanta, KP. We'll have you. You
can always relocate. Atlanta, Texas, all of those states.
Right, come to less expensive
your
states.
dollars would definitely stretch, because what you can get in Atlanta for like a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home is gonna cost you a pretty penny in California.
Well, let me say this: come buy an investment property in Atlanta. My grandmother was a cafeteria worker. And we lived in New York. She bought several properties in Georgia while she was on her cafeteria worker salary in New York. She bought several properties in Atlanta. So don't think Dietrich can get you somebody that can refer you out, get you an investment property, start building your wealth that way, that sort of thing. There's more things you can do than just sit there and rent, right? So think outside the box. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would echo the same thing Dietrich said and just add one piece, depending on what the difference is in the rent. Sometimes I've seen people complain about it being $50, $100 higher, right?
Right.
Doesn't make sense to me. If you do the 5% rule for rent, depending on the state, there's your $50 or $100, right? The other thing is right now, think about the time and season we're in, tax season. And what is everybody who has taxes doing? Looking for write-offs. Well, guess what? You can write off your interest, any discount points you paid, and taxes. So that helps you along the way. So you may not see an initial benefit from that while you're making your payment, but when you go to look at Uncle Sam and pay him, then those tax benefits could potentially help you because you paid interest on it. But it just, he's right. If your rent's 1,900 and you're going 3,500, then yeah, that may be a short-term goal to stay where you are, and use your job as an opportunity for your down payment. But hopefully you asked that question because I got a little trick for him.
All right. So, and both of these gentlemen do have real YouTube channels. Dietrich Williams has a channel. What's the name of your channel, Dietrich? I have the link up here in the start area.
Oh, Living in Southern California.
Living in Southern California. Check that out. All of this information will be in the description of this video, but I just want to take a minute to shout them out. And then Kevin is the People's Lender. If you do Kevin Jefferson People's Lender, you'll be able to find that as well. I just want to make sure you know how to contact them after this live. Please like and subscribe. There's 176 people on this live right now. I should have 176 likes. They're here to answer your questions, all of your questions. So get them in. So hit the like button on your phone, on your computer, wherever you are, hit the like button. All right, let's take these next questions. There's one about, I saw a student loan question. I'm coming to it. Let me find it again. I know this one going to be for you, Kevin. Student loans. Where is it? Boom. It's just Sherelle again. My husband and I both have student loans. Can you speak about how this could affect purchasing a home? Great question. And Kevin has a great video on this. So after this, go to his video on this. But give me a short answer. Give her a short answer, Kevin, on this one.
Short answer. Talk to a lender.
No, give her a better answer than that. Better answer than that. I want her to get a good answer, and then I want her to watch your video. But go ahead.
I got you. So what you need to do is, whether you're going FHA, VA, USDA, or conventional, you want to try to get on an income-based repayment plan. But you want to make sure that income-based repayment plan is above $0. I don't care if it's $2, we can use the payment. If it's at 0, you have to use 0.5% for FHA, 0.5% to 1.4% for conventional. And with VA, they're going to make you use a different calculation. It's too long. And then with USDA, they're going to make you use 0.5 to 1%. So you want to make sure you get on an income-based repayment plan, and you want to make sure the payment is above 0.
Okay, very good.
Biggest way.
And watch his video because he goes over that in greater detail on his channel. He has a student loan specific video. All right, I want to this question. Hi from Missouri. Hi, Simply Sincere. Can you give some advice? I don't think she meant gift. Can you give some advice on how to find a multi-generational home when they are scarce in the area? I'm going to start with this. When you're working with an agent, there are things in the MLS that they can be looking for. They can be looking for another kitchen, 2 kitchens, or a finished basement with a kitchenette. Usually multi-generational living typically involves another kitchen area. So somebody could be in one area of the home living, and somebody could be in the other area of the home where they don't have to necessarily share the kitchen area. That's how I see multi-generational sometimes. So they don't have to all the time be in the same place. Otherwise, just get a regular house and everybody shares the living quarters. So I look at multi-generational where maybe it has a separate entrance to a certain portion of your house. There's a house in the back of your house, but the MLS will have different things if you're really looking for 2 living spaces in the same property. What do you want to add to that? Because you're an agent as well. So go ahead, Dietrich. What do you want to add to that?
I would say, obviously you want to try to work with the agent because they're going to have boots on the ground. At least a great agent will. So they may know of some off-market properties. They may know through their sphere of influence somebody who's getting ready to sell one of those generational homes that you wouldn't know of unless you were tapped into that. The other thing is, I don't know what state you're necessarily in, but
Missouri.
There are laws right now, Missouri. So there are laws right now. I would just check within your state to see what the accessory dwelling unit or the ADU laws are, because they're making them more affordable for homeowners to build for the specific purpose that we're talking about, right? So you just want to kind of look at that stuff, work with the agent. One of the things that I do for my clients is I will look up properties in the MLS through the tax records of somebody who's been in, let's say, maybe it's a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex or something that I know has an ADU attached to it. If they've been in the home for over 25, 30 years, I may just go directly to the homeowner and ask them, hey, have you ever thought about selling? I have a client who's looking for a home. There's nothing on the MLS, nothing on the market. Here's what they're pre-approved for. If you're interested, please give me a call or let me know. So that's the kind of stuff that you have to be willing to do, and your agent has to be willing to do to get you the properties that you're looking for. There's always a way. You just have to figure out what that way is.
Right. You need to find an agent that's going to hustle. Ask them if they're going to hustle and call and meet up with these people who don't have their homes on the market and ask them whether they're willing to sell it or not. All right. We have a super chat, so I'm going to get that. Let me see. Asatan, thank you for the super chat. Hello. Do you have any advice for a college student working to become a homeowner? So they're a college student and they're working to become a homeowner. I'm gonna ask you, Kevin, you could start with this. Any advice?
Yeah, so depends on when you say working towards owning a home. So you can still purchase as long as you have the work history. If you don't necessarily have the work history, but you have the credit, some income, and not a lot of debt, you could probably partner with your parents and get in. They could be what you call a non-occupant co-borrower, which means we understand that your mom or dad or grandmom or grandfather are not going to live in the property, but their income and credit, along with your income and credit, allows for you to purchase. Instead of them getting a investment property, you can still get into a home with a 3.5% down payment or a 5% down payment using conventional and purchase a home. You're considered a homeowner. They're considered a homeowner. You have rights to it. You're on the deed. They have rights to it and they're on the deed. And then when you get in a position where you can purchase it outright by yourself, you can refinance them off. That's probably the easiest, most economical way to do it if you're not in position. But if you do work and some college students are beyond 19, 20 years old nowadays, as long as you have the income and credit, I would do it closer and sooner to you being into college, because that's less student loan that we have to calculate to the calculation.
All right, good point. Anything you want to add to that, Dietrich?
No, I think I think Kevin hit it right on the head. Just you're gonna have to have that income piece. You know, that's just the way it is. So you have to have that income piece. But he talked about kind of that collaborative economics again. You're working with your parents. Maybe you have a group of friends that are interested in the same thing, and you all are going to want to go buy a property that has 4 units. You got 4 friends, you each live in one of the units. I don't know. It just kind of depends on what you're trying to do in terms of what you're trying to purchase, where you're trying to purchase, and then how you're trying to purchase. So the answer could vary based on any one of those factors. But I would say, look at all of that stuff. Look at your parents. Look at a group of friends. I remember 2020, a group of friends, we were sitting around watching the television show. We used to do this every week. And I said, hey, what if 10 of us got together? We pitched in 10 grand and we're all working, right? We pitched in 10 grand and we went and go purchase that building right over there. It was an investment property. Mm-hmm. Everybody was like, nah, I think that's a bad idea. And they laughed. 2021 rolled around, right at the height of the pandemic. That same property, I got a call and somebody said, we should have listened to you, because had we had listened, it would have changed the economic destiny for all of our families. And I said, you're absolutely right. But this is part of the problem. At first, it's a mindset. Then we don't think we can when we actually can. So collaborative economics, again, is a way, parents, but the answer is going to vary depending on what it is that you're trying to do, what you're trying to buy, and where you're trying to buy.
Okay, good question. I love that story as well. We got to get together. Get a lawyer involved, though. Get a lawyer involved. We do have to get it together. All right, next question. Hello, guys. Hey, Tasha. Hello, guys. Do they have programs / grants for single parents who have children on disability, some type of assistance? I would say, Tasha, I'm going to start with this and then I'll see if the gentlemen have anything. I did a live all about down payment assistance where you put in your city and then all the programs that are available to you will come up. So I want you to watch that live under my live tab, that replay. And a lot of them do have special, they may give you a little bit more money if you have someone in your family on disability. So I want you to look at that. But there's not a federal, like national program that I'm aware of that covers this, but it'll be in a lot of your state and local, state and city programs that you'll find things like this. Anybody want to add they know of a program that would be good for her?
Depending on where she lives at, I know in Baltimore City has that program where they'll give you an additional $5,000 if you live in Baltimore City, along with the 10,000 that they're giving you. I know in Georgia Dream gives you an additional 2,500 bucks if you have someone in your family that has a disability. And let's say you're in an area that doesn't have it, the very fact that you can utilize that disability income to help you qualify is a benefit enough.
Okay, yeah. So go definitely look at that live. That's for anybody looking for down payment assistance. Look at that live, click on that link, put in your city and state, and all the programs available to you will come up. All right, good question. Let's see. I had another question. We talked about student loans. Let's see this. Hello, I'm a resident physician making 70K, but finishing in August, and my salary will significantly increase. Can I qualify for closing cost assistance by applying now? Dietrich, I'm gonna let you take that one while I'm looking for my next question. Will she qualify for, basically she wants to qualify on her lower salary before she start making this doctor money. So, so let's see what you say.
I would ask why you want to try to qualify before you get that salary increase. And if it's only because you're trying to capitalize on that closing cost assistance, you're going to have to really do some analysis to determine whether it's worth it. Because if you qualify without that income, but the amount of money that you're going to get for closing costs isn't as significant as what you would have got in terms of your salary increase, right? So that piece, I'm going to say you need to do some analysis to determine what that's going to be. You also have to factor in some of the DPA programs are what's factored in is what's called area median income. So it's not necessarily your income compared to the rest of the country. It's your income compared to where you plan on purchasing that home at. So for instance, in California, because we live in a high cost state, that AMI is increased in a lot of different areas. So that's why I'm saying you have to kind of figure out whether the salary increase is going to be significant enough for you to even not want to take it in terms of the qualification piece of it. Like you want to qualify at the lower salary. The other thing is that we still, even though we're in the seller's market, there's still a way for you to get sellers to pay your closing costs. So for instance, if you're looking at a house and you're like, it's been on the market for 180 days, 260 days, and you see that they've been doing price deductions, you can come back and instead of asking for a price deduction, you can say, instead of me asking for that $30,000, $50,000 price reduction, why don't I offer them full price and ask the seller to credit me that money that I can use toward my closing costs? So there's ways that you can maneuver around the closing cost piece of it. But again, you're going to have to do some analysis and really sit down and factor in, because I don't know what you're going to make from, a significant salary increase. Are we talking 70 to 140? Are we talking 70 to 100? I don't know what that is. So you're going to have to sit down and really kind of work through those numbers, get with your agent, wherever you're at, get with your agent or your financial advisor, whoever it is, and crunch through what those numbers look like so that you can compare apples to apples.
And Kevin made a good point at the beginning of this live. I know some people join later, but he said, stop waiting on the free money. Sometimes it does not make sense. Stop waiting on the free money. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. If you plan on buying a house and the only thing that's stopping you is closing costs and you want to buy at your $70,000 salary, go ahead and buy the house and get your closing costs paid from the seller or from another way. Don't wait on the free money, because by the time, it could be like what Dietrich was saying, do you want to qualify at the $200,000 you're going to be making? or the $70,000, but you're not going to let just some, little bit of closing costs stop you from purchasing when you want to purchase. Don't wait on it because you don't know what that market's going to be like. I don't know how many years you have left, but you don't know what that market is going to be like in the future. All right, Kevin, you want to add to that anything?
Yeah, I do. So let's look at it a different way from the lender standpoint. As of right now, if you try to qualify for a home on $70,000, you probably won't qualify because if you're in school, your student loans are deferred and you automatically have to utilize 1% of that balance if it's conventional. And if it's FHA, it's a 0.5%. VA, the same thing, USDA, 1%. So you're probably going to need that additional income to qualify because as a physician, unless you've got grants or paying for college out of pocket, you have a ton of student loan debt.
Okay. Very good point, Kevin. Go ahead and put all your questions in. This time is going fast. We only have about 15, 20 minutes. If you've been sitting here waiting to ask a question, make sure you put it in. All right. Ashley Cunningham has a question. Should I take my money and complete upgrades in my current home and sell it? Or should I just move and put the funds from selling my current home into a larger house? I'm planning for 2025. I'm going to take the question first and I'm going to give it to Dietrich. My answer to this would typically be, what is the difference between what you can sell it after you upgrade it versus what you can sell it before? Because I had a client who did a lot of upgrades ahead of time, and then, the buyers may or may have not liked the upgrades that they did, and they wasted some money, I think, in those upgrades. So you have to kind of think, is the value you're putting in for the upgrades, are you going to get them out in the sale? And an agent can help you determine what upgrades are worth it and what upgrades are not worth it. So the first thing you need to do is work with an agent now and say, hey, thinking about putting my house on the market, I may want to upgrade some things. What would you suggest is going to give me the most bang for my buck? Or should I just try to sell it, as is, not as is, but without any other upgrades? That would be my analysis before you make a decision either way by yourself. Have an agent look at it for you. Dietrich, what do you want to add?
And no, that's a very good point. And I would say it depends on what's your strategy, right? What is the goal in terms of your exit strategy? So are you using this money for retirement? Are you using this money to put your kids through school? What would you be using the money for at the end of the day? So, and you want to be able to maximize that. So if you're going to sink $50,000 into doing upgrades, and then you can only sell the house for an additional 25,000, it may not necessarily make sense, right? So at the end of the day, it all comes down to what do you want to do? Like, what do you want? What are you planning on doing? And then what is going to be the best way for you to utilize the money from the sale to do what it is that you want to do? So there's all kind of different moving parts that, like, we don't have all the information necessarily, but just from a basic standpoint, Shahid is spot on. Get with a realtor, find out what the upgrades would how that would benefit you or how it would hurt you in the sale of the current home. And I think that's probably the best starting point right there.
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. And mind you, this is our Black History Special Live. We have Kevin Jefferson, the People's Lender. We have Dietrich from LA, our LA Master LA Realtor here. So you have a lot of knowledge from every coast. Ask good questions because we don't want to stay at this 44% of home ownership. We want to move beyond that. All right. So ask the questions that you need to get you over the hill to home ownership. All right. Johnny says, we own our home outright with cash, meaning they don't have a loan on it. How can we use our home without putting it at risk? Money to remodel. I guess he's asking, and I'll give this to Kevin. So you have equity. He has equity in his home. We don't know how much equity he has. What can he do with the equity that he has? What are his options?
So first option is going to be to refinance. Like, contrary to what people believe, if you own it cash, yes, you have a ton of equity in it, but the only way to pull that equity out is to refinance, which is to finance the house over again to pull the equity out. You can't do a home equity line of credit because home equity line of credit, they always take second position. Well, if you don't have a first mortgage, then you can't get a second on it. Um, those are your real only option is to refinance. Now, in terms of putting your home at risk, um, if you're not going to pay the bill, then yeah, your home's going to be at risk, right?
Right, right.
That's the only risk you have unless you don't plan on paying the bill. But when you refinance, another thing is you don't have to pull out all of your equity. There are mortgage companies that have minimum loan amounts that they'll do, and just find out what that is. But to refinance and pull it out, and you don't have to necessarily do a 30-year term. The 30-year term will give you the smallest payment, but if you're concerned with paying it off, have the lender show you 20, 15, and then some companies have 10-year terms. So if those are the only ways to pull cash out, yes, the equity is there, but you have to finance it over with someone to pull it out, and you have to pay for it.
Okay. Good question. Good answer. Tamika says, can multiple down payment assistance be combined from different parties? I'm going to answer this really quickly. Sometimes you need to watch my video on down payment assistance and, figure out, because not all of them, and I'm going to say, Kevin, I like the theme of this is stop waiting on free money. But you want to, if you cannot, that shouldn't stop you from using down payment assistance or buying a home on your own. The inability to stack a program. Well, this one's giving me 10,000. This one's giving me 15. Can I get 25? And a lot of times, if you're unable to do that, that may hold you back. So go ahead very quickly. It's a very quick thing you can do. Look for all of the programs you qualify for. You can email them, email the administrators, email some lenders. Can any of them be used together? Get your answer without, like a week's worth of research. And then, strategize from there. I get this question a lot because they're trying to get as much money as possible. And the truth is, sometimes you can, but they're probably going to limit you to where you can live, what area of the city, because you're combining sometimes state programs with city programs, that sort of thing. But watch that video about down payment assistance. I go over stacking down payment assistance programs. All right. Does VA allow for down payment assistance? And a lot of VA people ask me that. I think yes, it depends on the program. But a lot of times, remember, all down payment assistance programs have strings attached. So sometimes it's better for you to try to save some money and get the seller to help you contribute to your closing costs than to use an outside program. But I'm going to let Kevin answer this, see if he's had this experience with VA buyers, and I'll let Dietrich do it. My VA buyers have never used a down payment assistance program. They've had either the seller or the builder contribute, and they've paid the rest, in my experience.
So VA will allow for assistance, meaning instead of it going towards down payment, it goes towards closing costs. But it has to be a program that can be used for either or. See, some programs are just strictly down payment assistance programs. That's why they call it down assistance programs. The program that will allow for you to do it is typically going to be a city bond or grant or state bond. And if you don't qualify for it, then what I found is Americans love their veterans. We're also in a market where sellers are willing to give closing cost assistance. So instead of waiting and not qualifying, like Dietrich said, have an agent and tell them, hey, I'd like to offer X amount of dollars on this house, and I'd like to see if they can pay 4 or 5% for my closing cost assistance. Worst case scenario, they say I can only pay 3. Guess what? You save thousands of dollars, right? So on a $200,000 home, you save $6,000 in closing cost assistance that you would normally have to pay. So yes, some will. If you don't qualify, make sure you ask your agent to ask. And one thing to add, sometimes adding that assistance program, you don't qualify because it's considered a level of risk. Because remember, when we look at risk, how much money is this person putting into the deal? You already don't have a down payment. And if you don't bring closing costs, that may be a red flag to say, hey, if worst case scenario happened, this person can walk away easily from this loan because they have nothing vested into it. What determines that? Typically, higher scores can get away with adding assistance. Mid to lower scores, it creates a problem unless you have leftover money called reserves.
Okay, good. Did you want to add something real quick to that?
No, and I would just say, it's not that we're trying to discourage you from using these DPA programs, these down payment assistance programs, but when we say all free money ain't free, that is the truth. So for instance, if you're trying to stack one DPA program to save you closing costs, you may get it, but it may also come with an equity share piece to that down payment assistance. On top of, most of them will say you have to live in the home for a certain amount of years. It has to be your primary residence. So what happens is, if you decide, hey, I need to move, I gotta go, something happened, I gotta relocate, and they're telling you got to stay in the house for 5 years and it's 3 years later, well, guess what? You're gonna have to pay some of that money back that you just borrowed in closing costs, right? So that's why we're saying be very diligent about the types of programs that you're looking at and what you're looking for and what you're trying to do, because a lot of times it's better to actually ask the seller to cover the closing costs than it is to go get one of these DPA programs. So there's ways that you can work the system. You just have to know how to work the system. So just be careful.
All right, good question. And maybe I'm gonna let Kevin get this one because I don't totally understand what you're talking about, because it says, can you refinance into a 5% conventional or FHA? But refinance from what? Like, what do you have now? Right? Is it a
Right.
VA loan? Is it USDA loan? If you're trying to do conventional or FHA. So when can you refinance? Let's answer that question, maybe, Kevin. When can you refinance?
So you can refinance when you have 15 or 20% equity into your home. So it doesn't make sense to go from FHA and try to refinance into a 5% conventional. Doesn't make sense. But if you have an FHA loan and you'd like to get rid of your mortgage insurance and you have 20% equity in the property, then that's when you go from FHA into a conventional loan. However, it's got to make sense, because yes, you're trying to get rid of mortgage insurance, and let's say the mortgage insurance is $100 a month, with FHA interest rate being lower than conventional. Is it worth refinancing to save $100, but your payment goes up? So it just all depends.
All right, I'm gonna promote one of my videos real quick. You need to watch my video, when it makes sense to refinance. So watch that video. When does it make sense to refinance? And I'm gonna go ahead and show my commercial because I need to buy my masterclass. We're gonna take a little break. It's about a minute and I think 30 seconds. Watch that. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat. Looking for guidance on the first-time homebuyer process, and are you tired of those first-time homebuyer guides that leave you with more questions than answers? You are not alone. Most of those guides provide basic definitions and explanations because they're afraid to dig deeper, because they don't want to give you too much information, because then you may question what they're doing, your inspector, your agent, your lender. But what if you could become a confident first-time homebuyer armed with knowledge and clarity? Introducing my first-time homebuyer masterclass and Confidently Closed digital handbook. Join thousands of successful homebuyers who have unlocked the secrets to a seamless home buying journey. My comprehensive resources include a step-by-step masterclass, exclusive Confidently Closed digital handbook and sample documents, and a bonus new construction mini masterclass and checklist. You're not gonna find this organized like I've organized it anywhere else. Our 9-step video masterclass, explainer videos, and 40-page digital handbook will be your trusted companion through the home buying process. Don't let the complexities of home buying overwhelm you. Invest in your education today and make confident decisions from the start. Check my reviews and the thousands of people that I have helped confidently buy their first home. Okay, I think that was a little bit delayed, but thank you for staying with me, Kevin. Thank you for reminding me to put my course in here. So go ahead and get the masterclass. If there's any fear that you have with purchasing your first home, I literally take you step by step by step and have checklists for every step of the process. So go take a look at that. All right. Going back, go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. This is good information. They're answering it, all of your questions. We're about 203 people on right now. So go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. Some of the questions are a little bit confusing, to be honest with you guys. So I may be skipping over the things that you're asking. I want to really stay focused with home ownership, how you can, buy a house, how we can, as African Americans, really eliminate some of the things that may be holding us back from home ownership. So start asking those types of questions because I'm prioritizing those. All right, talk about cars. Well, I'm looking for the next question. Talk about cars for a second, Kevin. How are people's car payments stopping them from purchasing property?
So car payments, like, let me see. Typically, let's say you have an average of $600, $700 car payment. That's $600, $700 of buying power that you don't have. What does that equate to? Probably about $75,000 to $85,000 in purchasing power.
Okay, say that again and say it slower, because I think they need to make sure they get that. A $700 car payment equates to how much of a house payment?
In terms of a house payment, it allows for you to purchase about $75,000 or $85,000 more in house. So, example, if you have a $700 car payment, you go to your lender and get pre-approved, and the lender tells you, "Hey, you're pre-approved for $200,000." If you didn't have that car payment, it'd probably be $275,000, $285,000. Big difference in what you can buy and where you buy. A lot of times I see on our credit reports, when I see, and that's the African American community, the person with the better credit and the most money is the one with all the family's cars in their name. Now, I will tell you this, don't let that stop you from applying. Why? Because there's a way we could potentially not exclude that car payment, but it has to be set up properly. If you're in a situation where you need to buy a car, you want to buy a car or a house, you can always get the house first, then the car. But when you do it in reverse, it's likely not to happen.
Okay, very good. I just want you guys to hear that as much as possible, because a lot of people, the first thing they do when they first get a job, they first, get out of college, they buy a car, and they usually buy a pretty expensive car with a pretty substantial car payment. Then when they're ready to buy a house, they didn't realize that car payment was going to stop them or make them, not qualify for as much. We need to prioritize home ownership above cars. Dietrich, you want to add anything to that?
No, Kevin hit it spot on. One of the things I also would suggest you don't do is, when you're in that process of having your deal accepted, you're in escrow, do not go buy a new car. Do not go buy a new car because you want to park your nice new shiny whip in the driveway for everybody to see that you made it. Don't do that. That's the fastest way that you will go from being in escrow to being out of escrow. Because they're still checking your credit, they're still running all of that stuff until the day you actually close on the house. So don't go purchase a new car, don't go buy new appliances, don't do any of that stuff. When you get to that position where you actually got the house, just chill.
Okay, yeah, a pre-approval is just that, a pre-approval. You're not approved yet until you're clear to close. All right, I'm going to go through kind of rapid fire. I'll pick the question and pick the person that's going to answer them. I'm not going to answer them anymore. All right, is purchasing a REO or auction worth the risk? And is it possible to finance them? I'm going to let Dietrich take that.
Depends on what your risk tolerance is. So if you're somebody let's say it's an REO or an auction, you haven't seen the property, but you're going to put money in and just go ahead and purchase it sight unseen. If you're really risk averse, you might be okay. But if you're like, so it depends on what your risk factor is, because they can be very risky. I would just say do your due diligence. Make sure you either have a good attorney or a good agent that can help navigate you through that process. Yes, they can be financed, but how you finance them depends. It could be a traditional lender, but it may cost you. It may be a hard money lender. It's definitely going to cost you. So it just depends on what your risk factor is and what you're willing to pay for it.
All right, and I do have a video about buying a foreclosure property at auction as a first-time home buyer. Watch that video. This one's for Kevin, YouTube user. Doesn't make sense. And Kevin, you guys used to be an agent, so I'm going to go back and forth. Doesn't make sense to buy rural land to put a mobile home on it versus build. Is the cost any higher to do one or the other? Also, what are the pros and cons to a new build versus fixer upper? You're asking a lot of questions in this one little thing. So we're going to try to address as many as possible. But I do have a video called Building a House on Your Own Land. You should watch that. I'm going to let Kevin try to tackle this as much as possible, but quickly.
Does it make sense to buy rural land and put a mobile home on it? That's the same thing as building. It's the same process, the same type of loan. It's a construction loan. And the mobile home has to be on a permanent foundation. At the end of the day, if you're going to build, I would go for stick built. Yes, you get more square footage with a mobile home, but the value doesn't stay the same. And if you go and do improvements to it, technically you're building onto a car, still a mobile home. Not discouraging it, but if you have to build, new construction and get less square footage versus a mobile home, I'd go new construction all day, stick built.
All right, Kevin, if you're renting to a family member, will that hurt your application? Renting to a family, I don't see how that would hurt you, right? Or maybe she means renting from a family member. Will that hurt your application?
I'm gonna answer both.
Okay.
If you're renting to a family member, so example, let's say a family member is renting a room inside of your house and you have some type of lease agreement, you need to carry that on your taxes if you want to offset that cost. If you want to be able to use that as income, you need to carry that on your taxes, and that's where it gets missed. If you're renting to a family member and your names both are the same, they're going to question it and they may not approve it. Because they're going to say, hey, is she renting to her mom just so she can get this other house? Because the lease it can be in place, but the person isn't in the house, and that can always change afterwards. It can do it in both scenarios, but they scrutinize it when you have a family member on the lease agreement of a house that you're going to be keeping and renting out, because they're wondering, hey, is this person really going to rent it, or are they doing it so they can buy?
All right, another question for you, Kevin. Gotta keep it going. Under contract, is it a good idea to pay off your car?
You can pay it off at closing. The reason why I say pay it off at closing is because if you do it before closing, you have to source the funds, you got to trace down the payoff, and then you got to get additional documents. If you let your lender know, hey, I want to pay my car off at closing, we get the payoff letter, we send the funds to the attorney's office, and we let them disperse it, because we don't have to question where it came from, because the attorney will take care of that.
Okay, good question, good answer. All right, they said who has just chimed in? Who's Kevin and Dietrich? Are they part of your team? Kevin and Dietrich are both friends of the channel. They have their own YouTube channel. Kevin is the people's lender. He has their Kevin, tell them who you are, because people are just coming in.
I am Kevin Jefferson, aka the People's Lender, on Instagram and YouTube. Follow me on my YouTube channel. I lend in all 50 states and DC. I do down payment assistance. I do everything from first-time home buyers, single moms, seniors, investments, commercial. If it's a loan, you name it, I do it.
Yes. Dietrich, who are you?
My name is Dietrich Williams. I'm a realtor here in Los Angeles, California. You can follow me on Living in Southern California or at Dietrich the Realtor on Instagram.
All right, and all of their information will be in the description of this video. I asked them to come for this special live stream for Black History Month so we can talk about the state of Black home ownership and so they can answer your questions. All right, I'm going to let Dietrich take this one. What if your income is low, making it hard to save? Is it still possible to become a homeowner? She has a 2-year job history and no debt. Is it still possible? Let me say one thing before I throw it over to Dietrich. Just because your income is low now doesn't mean your income needs to stay low. I think that's a mentality of my income is low. You can probably still purchase something if you qualify at that low income, depending on where you live. But think ahead and say, okay, how can I be taking my income and improving my income? Because you don't want to just say I'm a low income earner and that's where I'm going to stay. You can be in 6 months, make higher income than you're making now. So always be thinking ahead. Get your goal and not stay at a low income, a low income earner. But go ahead, Dietrich.
No, that's very good. Because that would have been my same advice. Is just because your income is low now, that doesn't mean that's where you're going to end up 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So the fact that what I really looked at in that response is that you said you have no debt.
Right.
That's huge. You have no debt. That is huge. So you need to be able to leverage the fact that you do not have any debt. You can also, again, we're not discouraging anybody from using DPA programs. That may be a way for you to get into the game, that you can take your whatever low is, right? Low is subjective, depending on where you are. Low income could be subjective. So talk to a lender, interview 3 or 4 of them, find out what rates and terms they offer, find out what's the best solution for you. But don't just assume because you have low income that you're going to be disqualified from becoming a homeowner. There's a lot of people that I've helped that don't have the type of incomes that you would typically see in Southern California, and they still found a way.
Okay. Good answer. And I want to say this too. I just forgot what I was going to say, Kevin. Low income, you can. I forgot. Totally forgot what I was going to say. But let me take the next question. And I'll think about it. I have a car note now. Should I downsize? This is for Kevin. Should I downsize my car to lower my debt? But I'm afraid to have a hard pull on my credit report to do so. Stop being scared of the hard pulls. Please watch my video. Kevin and I did a video to talk about hard pulls and why you should not be scared of that. But if he has this car note, should Amy, should she downsize her car to lower her debt?
I would say talk to the lender first to see if it's even a factor, because you may downsize your car and lower your debt and still not qualify, or you may downsize and still qualify for the same amount because it's not a significant change in the payment. I would say talk to the lender and see, because what people don't understand is 9 times out of 10, when you pay a car off early, your score decreases. So you have to look at all of those factors and see where you are score wise. That may be the 2 or 3 points that you need to get you over the hump. So I would talk to a lender first, a knowledgeable lender who can give you a game plan.
All right. Yes. And answer this question, Dietrich. And I'm trying, you guys. I know we're over 8 o'clock. So thank you for staying with me, gentlemen. I just want to get some of these quick questions that people have been asking. Is escrow, this for Dietrich, is escrow the same as being under contract? And I feel like people on the West Coast say I'm in escrow, and we in the South, I feel like don't say that as much. So are you saying the same thing, under contract and being in escrow?
No, so for us here, it's different. When you're under contract, that just means that you have an accepted offer. Now, technically, they would say by definition you are in escrow. Most people though would say you're technically not in escrow until you submit your earnest money deposit to go into the escrow company. So the definition is going to vary from place to place. And here, like I said, technically they would say once you have the accepted offer, you have technically started the escrow process. But if you haven't put those documents into the escrow company, if you have not sent your earnest money deposit or your good faith, whatever you want to call it in your neck of the woods, into the escrow company, technically, no, you aren't. And here's why I'm saying that. For California, typically we have 3 days to put our money into escrow from an earnest money deposit standpoint. If during that 3 days something happens and the seller decides that they're going to do something else, or let's say the 3 days lapses and you don't submit your funds, your EMD, the seller can go choose another offer. So no, you wouldn't be in escrow, right? Because that would say like you went in and you fell out, but you never really went in because you didn't put your money in there. So from a fundamental standpoint, yes, technically once you get the dotted line sign, you're in escrow. But for me, I would say no, we're not in escrow until you put those funds in.
Okay, good distinction. Good job. All right. Do you recommend using cash to pay 100% for a house, or is it wise to pay 80 to 90% of the house and leave 10% to help build credit? Our credit needs help, but we have the majority of the money. I ain't worried about building my credit if I have cash to pay for a house. That's because
Right.
why is your credit bad if you got all this cash lying around? I mean, that would be my thing. What do y'all think? I would say no. Go ahead and pay cash if you got it. If you plan, that's what you're planning on doing. I'm not just going to leave 10% so I can build my credit. You can build your credit in other ways and figure out why is your credit bad when you have all this money.
That's the question. Where is it bad at, right?
Right.
So that's the piece that doesn't. A lot of times we get the comments, but we don't get the context behind the comments. So when you say bad credit, is it bad credit because you have a bunch of late payments, or is it bad credit because you have a bunch of debt that's outstanding? So we have to be very specific, like what you mean when you say bad credit and why it's bad. Because if you have the cash to just outright pay for a house, what do you need the credit for anyway? Unless you're planning on doing something else, right? I would just take the cash and purchase the house and not have to worry about it. Because when you purchase the house, that will help build your credit back up, right? So there's pieces to this where we don't get all the information. So I would just say, depending on what your idea or what you're talking about from a bad credit perspective, you need to look at that and the overall goal. Because if the overall goal is to own a home, why keep the 10% out? Unless you're going to use the 10% to like pay down debt to boost your credit back up, I get it. But if you're utilizing credit to buy the house, then it almost doesn't make a whole bunch of sense not to just purchase the house outright in cash.
All right, Kevin, what do you think?
Put the question back up. I want to understand it.
You want maybe go back and get that question?
I'm sorry.
They said they're buying a house. Hold up. They said, do you recommend using cash to pay for a house 100%, or is it wise to pay, say, 80 or 90% of the house and leave 10% to help build credit? Our credit needs help, but we have the majority of the money.
Right. So that's what I thought it said. So you might as well buy it cash. You know, even though we would love to get the loan, no one's going to give you 10% on a house. So example, if the house is 200,000 and you put down 180, no one's going to give you a mortgage for $20,000 because there's, you know, for that same loan, there's $200,000 and 20,000. It's the same work into it. So I would, if you got the ability to pay it cash, buy it cash. Later on, if you want to do, refinance and pull your cash back out when your credit gets better and invest that cash, then you can. But I would buy it cash if I had it.
All right, I have my last two questions. I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. Thank you for joining us on the live stream. Also, my next week, Thursday, we're going to have an estate planning attorney that's going to talk about estate planning, making sure we have our wills, our trusts, because a lot of our wealth is lost through real estate because we're not passing it down. We're not passing our assets down correctly because a lot of us don't have wills or trusts. So my last two questions, the first one is going to be from EB. She said, for people who are single with no children and no heirs, do you still recommend home ownership? And I thought this question kind of stood out to me. And I think home ownership doesn't necessarily have to do anything with having children or having heirs. When you're talking about ownership and assets and building a foundation for stability, because if we're not owners, we are not borrowing, but we are at the mercy of whoever owns our property. If they decide you're a renter, they want to raise your rent, they'll raise it. If they decide they want to sell their property and move on, you're going to have to get out of that property. When you don't have ownership, you lose a lot of control personally, whether you have children or you don't have children, right? So I think home ownership is more of an overall personal financial stability piece for me. When I had no kids at 23, no husband, no anything, I bought my first house. And I wasn't thinking, well, I don't have any kids and I don't have any heirs, I shouldn't buy a property. It was for my financial stability and my financial growth. It'd be the same thing of me opening a Roth IRA or a 401k. You're doing that for yourself. What do you guys think? I'll let Kevin talk first and then Dietrich.
Yeah, I agree. Doesn't matter. You could potentially leave that house to your nieces and nephews. You know what I mean? And because you don't have any kids now doesn't mean you won't ever have any. And whether you don't have kids and if you don't have nieces and nephews, for the rest of your life, you need somewhere to stay. So I would buy it. That doesn't matter. What happens when you're gone? If you don't have heirs, nothing you can do about it, but you had the opportunity to enjoy the house while you were there.
Yeah. What about you, Dietrich?
And I would echo the same thing. We talked about while we were kind of, getting ready to go into this live stream that a third of us as African Americans don't have retirement accounts, which means that when our winter years come and we're no longer able to work, we're going to be at the mercy of the government. Social Security might not be there. And if you don't have a 401k, it's going to be really, really tough. However, if you own a home and times get really, really tough, there's an opportunity for you to liquidate that asset to be able to give you the funds to sustain you through retirement, right? So owning a home is not just a place to stay, but owning a home gives you leverage. It gives you options. And that's where our people sorely miss out on is we don't get the leverage, we don't get the options. And then one day we look up and we go, what am I going to do? The economy has shifted. I'm on a fixed income and I can no longer afford what I used to be able to afford. But if you had a house, not saying that everything is going to be perfect with it, right? Because there's going to be some trials and tribulations that come with home ownership. It's not just all Shangri-La. There's some things that you're going to have to do. But when you're in that position where you actually are a homeowner, again, you have leverage. And that is the name of the game when we're talking about wealth creation and closing that wealth gap that has been so huge for the last, I don't even know how many decades.
All right, I'm going to end on this question. And Sherelle asked this. She says, as an African American, do you think it's more beneficial to have a Black realtor? And I think this is a good one to close on for Black History Month. And I'm going to begin with this. And I think one of the things some people ask me, is it important to you that your realtor have a house themselves? There's a lot of agents that don't have houses. They're living in apartments. They're, they're still living with their parents. They just have their real estate license and they're selling their house. And I think there is a sense of when you do, I'm not saying you cannot use an agent that doesn't already have a house, right? But I think there's a sense of understanding, right? They understand somebody who's bought a house, they understand the process. They understand going through underwriting. They understand the stress. They understand some of those things because they've gone through it themselves. So I think when, working with other African-American clients, I have a level of understanding of their situation. I understand why their grandmother, their father, their mother, everybody's here. And this is such a big deal for them. I understand the risk that they're taking by stepping out. A lot of times in our communities, they're the first one to purchase a home in their families. I understand that importance. I understand the risk. I understand the courage sometimes it takes to step out. So I think, number one, I think it's a understanding of one another, understanding of our culture, and knowing how important homeownership is and the tasks that you're taking. Also, we talked about cooperative economics. I think we have to start supporting each other in our businesses and that sort of thing. So if you do have a lot of choices and you're interviewing agents, you need to, at least interview other African-American agents. Because we spend a lot of money outside of our own communities, and we need to start supporting every independent real estate agent is their own business. So just on that standpoint of, helping other people in our community build their businesses, I think it's very important. So that's my stance on it. We're going to do Kevin, and then we're going to do Dietrich.
Oh, I love this question. I say yes. But the other thing I say is give them some grace as well. Because a lot of times we utilize each other. And if we make one small mistake, we're thrown away and you no longer want to use us and support our business. When our counterparts can do the same exact thing and you give them another opportunity. I say yes. Black loan officer, Black realtor, Black attorney, if at all possible, to keep that in the family, right? Because sometimes your loan officer doesn't look like you may send you, your realtor that doesn't look like you may send you to a loan officer that don't care for you. And then they don't give you the loan or work hard on you. They do the very bare minimum to help, but they don't go over above and beyond. And then you accept what they say that you can't apply. And then they've discouraged you and you no longer look and you rent the rest of your life. But I say, heck yeah.
All right, Dietrich, close us out.
So this is going to be a very controversial one, right? So we have a certain section of Los Angeles that used to be known as the Black Beverly Hills. It's called View Park. A lot of affluent Black people live in that neighborhood. A lot of them lost homes when the crash happened, right? When it came time to sell, many of them did not choose agents that look like them. And what wound up happening is the community turned from not looking like it used to being more gentrified. And a lot of people got upset. My question to them was, how are you going to be mad that the area got gentrified when you use the agent that didn't look like you, who talked to another agent that didn't look like you, who brought in a client that did not look like you, yet you're upset that the neighborhood is changing? So yes, it makes a difference. And I think it is beneficial because as we've been talking about cooperative economics, as we've been talking about recycling the black dollar, that is extremely important as we not only as we come to the tail end of Black History Month, but just to keep that same energy throughout the rest of the year. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, and a lot of people won't say this, but I'm gonna be dead honest with you. There are agents that don't look like me, that don't look like us, that will go out and they will tell their friends and all their buddies, hey, I know about this neighborhood. Hey, I know about this house. Hey, I know about this opportunity. We never get the chance to be involved in getting in on those opportunities because we don't have the information that they have. So I'll put it to you like this, and I heard this once and it always stuck with me. If you're not at the table, it's probably because you're on the menu. So I want you to think about that. If you're not at the table, it's probably because you're on the menu. So yes, it is not only is it beneficial, I think that to not use an agent that looks like you, and again, this is controversial, I think that's detrimental to the whole thing, that we're talking about. Because Shahida can attest to this. If you look at what other agents make in terms of real estate agents, commission, and you look at what Black agents make, the difference is so staggering, you would wonder how most of us actually stay in business. And a lot of us are competing in the same neighborhoods for the same piece of pie because we are targeting our own people, and that pie is Black home ownership extremely small.
Yep. I mean, we just said it's 44%. So 44%. We're staying in, and I would say the majority of our clients look like us for the most part, right? Because, you know, we're attracted to who looks like us, they'll understand us, that sort of thing. So if we're in this pool of this 44%, of course, we're trying to bring in these other 56%. But as far as buying and selling, we're only in that 44% pool. And there's some people that are not going to use us just by looking at us, right? And you guys, some of you know that. We're in Black History Month. Some people are not even going to consider hiring Kevin, or not going to consider, before they even know us, know our backgrounds, know our level of expertise, they may not even consider hiring us as an agent up front. So you have to kind of think about that. Even on YouTube, y'all don't see me that much. I've been on Jeb's channel. I've been on Christina Smallhorn's channel. When I was first getting started, I asked to go on other people's channels and they told me no. So, you know, there's a lot of that going on. So I'm not saying that other agents aren't as skilled and they can help you. But if you know, again, cooperative economics, if you know the history of real estate, in America, that should want you to seek out an African American lender. It should make you want to seek out an African American real estate agent. And I agree with Kevin, give them some grace. Because I'm not saying that, you need to deal with bad customer service or that sort of thing. But, you know, as soon as one thing goes wrong, that's why I try to help a Black business. You know, we always have that going on, but you don't say that the same thing to other people that do similar things. So we need to just make sure that we are, serving each other well, definitely. And we also need to make sure that, again, we're giving each other grace as we build our businesses and we serve and all of those things. So I think we could drop the mic. What'd you say, Kevin? Dietrich, you said if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
If you don't have a seat at the table, it's probably because you're on the menu.
And we're gonna drop the mic on that one. Everybody's information will be in the description of this video. Go ahead, drop it, Kevin. Drop it. Okay. Everybody's information will be in the description of this video. Thank you for joining me. Join me next week for estate planning. And thank you, gentlemen, for being with me and staying later. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for this, because this is tremendous. And I love the fact that you are such an advocate to push for this. So everybody who's on Shahida's channel, you need to give her kudos. Give her flowers. Give her flowers.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.